Identity Mapping Part 2. If you didn't catch last week's episode, go ahead, head over, listen to that one first. It's going to make a lot more sense if you make sure and grab Identity Mapping Part 1. But today we are diving into Identity Mapping Part 2 and really looking at the fullness of what is identity mapping. Before we jump in, as always, if you are looking to get connected to what we are doing and what's going on, head over to rockygarza.com/beyond success. Again, that's rockygarza.com/beyond success. And what we're doing there is we're showing you every way that you can get involved with us, what our next free event is we have coming up, and how you can get plugged in directly to what it is that we're doing. Again, that's rockygarza.com/beyond success. Now, as we talk about identity mapping today, just a couple things, a quick recap for those of you from last week. Identity mapping is our longest running process. It was developed about a decade ago, and over the last decade, we've taken thousands, if not tens of thousands of people through the identity mapping process, from one-on-one with you and me over the course of a half day to all the way to we've taken 400 or 500 people at a time through it in a big, large group setting. And again, identity mapping is an experience. It is a process, a methodology that allows us to discover a language for who we are. Now, I want to break this down just for a little bit here because we're going to get into each component and each section of identity mapping. But I want to make sure that we have an ability to understand that identity mapping is not an assessment that you take that tells you who you are. Okay? Identity mapping is an assessment that you go through. It is a methodology that you are guided through so that you can find the language for who you are in a way that it already exists. What I mean by that is this. Every person that I've ever met, I believe, knows exactly who they are. The only problem they run into is that they are illiterate to the language needed in order to speak about themselves in a way that is understandable. All of us have a deep understanding of who we are. We have this intrinsic feeling about what makes us us, but where we so often feel misunderstood is that we lack the words and the language to describe it in a way that is understandable. See, identity mapping does a few things for us. Number one is it helps us understand, how does our brain work? How is our brain working on an active and a regular basis? Then from there, we've kind of broken into three components: our values, which is why we do what we do, our strengths, which is how we do what we do, and our identifiers, which are what we do. We put all this language together, and this in effect builds out our identity map. This gives us a clear ability and a language for who we are. And so what I want to do today is I want to walk us through each of these components to really have us look at what is each section of identity mapping, how could this possibly help us, and then most importantly, towards the end, why is it valuable to have a language for who I am? Why is that significant, and why does that matter at all? Let's jump in. We start off what we call a get to know me process. That's not for me to get to know you, that's for you to get to know you. We call this the upside down. Now, sometimes we teach the upside down all by itself. Really, the upside down is a mechanism that allows us to think most methodically as a human. What do you think about? Great, tell me that, tell me about that, tell me about that, tell me about that. With you get 2 or 3 tell me about that's in, you tend to get more to the root of what it is that you were attempting to say. We say we go to the upside down, meaning we take that, we flip it around, and then we read it in the opposite order. The reason we read it in the opposite order is because we tend to find an exponential amount of clarity when we read it back to ourselves the other way, and then in essence, we call that the upside down. Now, when we're teaching the upside down as a part of identity mapping, we're going through and looking at 4 components of how our brain works. We're looking at our thoughts, our fears, our hopes, and our dreams. Now, we do that in a much more fun way. We don't just say, tell me your thoughts, fears, hopes, and dreams, because the reality is that most of us wouldn't give an answer that is applicable to the upside down because we don't actually know what our thoughts, hopes, and dreams are. Therefore, what we do is we ask it in question form that really allows us to create some introspection about who we are. See, when we go through and we answer these questions, thoughts, fears, hopes, and dreams, this is typically how the human brain works. We are most active and most often we are thinking in this order. What we do is we go through and answer it and show that what we think about most is typically related to what we fear most. What we fear most is preventing us from doing what it is that we really hope to do. And if we never actually do what we hope to do, most likely we never accomplish our dreams. Now, I don't attempt at all to oversimplify the process. I'm not attempting to oversimplify how our brain works or the extent of our humanity. Rather, I am attempting to show that it's not overly complicated to understand how our brain works, which in essence gives us the ability to begin to change the way that we think. So as we explore the upside down, this is sort of part one, if you will. There's 4 components of identity mapping. Part one is understanding how our brain works. And it's vital to do this. We actually treat the upside down, we call it you discovering you. We treat that as a whole independent component, an independent keynote all by itself. A workshop that you, your team could possibly go through is walking them to show them how the upside down works, because it's wildly revelatory for our brain, for us to understand us, and deeply impactful for how we operate in a business setting and in our personal life. So it's really, really valuable to see that. Now, where we really get into the fun part with identity mapping is from there we begin to walk into what are the 3 main components of how identity mapping works. The first component is what we refer to as our core values. And the reason that we utilize this aspect first, the reason we utilize core values first, is because for us, we often find that we need a language to describe why we do what we do, okay? Again, we need a language to describe why we do what we do. We utilize core values because we say core values, in essence, actually serve us 2 purposes. Your core values serve as a foundation and a filter for why you do what you do in every aspect of your life. Anytime anybody asks you a question with the word why in it, why did you do that? Why can't you do that? Why haven't you done that? Why won't you do that? Why didn't you do that? Anything with the word why, if we really were to get down to the core of it, pun intended, if we would really get to what is our core values. Our core values represent sort of this foundational, this fundamental element of who we are as a human being that really shows and shapes how we make decisions. What do we do? How do we do them? What does that look like? And so we're really always looking to see what is a language for that. Now, in identity mapping, we walk you through, we give you a word bank to choose from, and we say, I want you to select 5 words, put them in order, and then briefly define them. The reason we do this is because we want us to begin to create this element of personal identity around a language that is not only understood by all of us, most importantly to identity mapping, we're choosing language that is good. See, every word that we give you the option to choose from in identity mapping is a positive word. What I mean by that is that every word in there is not procrastination, not a word. Money, not a word, right? Not because it's not a good tool, it's a great tool, but it's not a value. We're looking for this more deeper intrinsic elements of language that really describe why we do what we do. Kindness, joy, love, vulnerability, authenticity, professionalism, dedication, loyalty. We're looking for a language that describes at our core, if we could only boil it down to 5, what are the 5 things that we would say we value most? Now, the reason we do this, a little tip for you here, is because when we have this language, both personally and professionally, it's a gateway to us having a much greater understanding of the people we work with and the people we lead. See, right now, many of you are making the mistake, if you are a people leader of any kind in your professional life, sometimes you find yourself not having the ability to coach people the way you want them to be coached. And that's because you are making a mistake by coaching them to your values rather than coaching them to theirs. See, I think leadership, we lead with our values. You joining me here on this podcast, coming to one of our events, you and I working together. I'm going to lead you with my values. Meaning I'm going to show up as me, and I'm going to lead us down a path based on the things that I value most. Because in that essence, I'm going to be your leader. When you are coaching someone, however, if I'm coaching you, when I am coaching you, I'm coaching you to your values. I'm not coaching you to my values. I don't need to coach you to be like me. I need to coach you to be like you. If you currently have a coach that is attempting to get you to emulate them, they're not coaching you. They're just telling you the only thing that they know, which is themselves. See, great coaches have the ability to get to know you for who you are so they can help you become a greater you, not to become a replication of who they are. So we utilize core values for this purpose, right? We serve as a foundation and a filter. The second aspect, or the third process, if you will, of identity mapping, we have the upside down, we have our core values. The third element is our strengths. Our strengths, meaning our muscles. What are our muscles? What are the things that we do most naturally, most often? Now, here's one of the largest misconceptions about strengths that I find. So often, I think we have been accustomed to talking about strengths as though they are the what rather than the how. I want to say that to you again. I think one of the largest misconceptions in personal and professional development is that we mistake strengths for what we do rather than how we do everything. You see, your strengths are how you human. They're not what you do, they're how you do it all. I've been a summer camp director, I have been a pastor, I have been a wedding photographer, I have been a coach, a consultant, a keynote speaker, and a father, a husband. And in all of those places, It wasn't about what I was doing, it was about how I was doing it. Yes, I know it may be far-fetched, but how I was a wedding photographer is how I am a consultant. And how I am a father is how I'm a husband. How I'm a husband is how I was a pastor. And what I mean by that is the muscles that I was using in all of those are the same. And I can see that because I have a language for how I operate best. Often I find that we see ourselves misconstruing our strengths as the what we do rather than how we do it. And listen, let me give you an example like this. If I were to say, what is one of your strengths? And you said my arms. And I say, great, you have strong arms. And you say, yes. And I say, what do? You don't say armsing. That doesn't make any sense. But that's how it sounds when we take a strength like communication, we take a strength like strategic, we take a strength like analytical, we take a strength like deliberative, we take a strength like woo, we take a strength like command, and we say, what do? And we say, I command. No, I woo. No, I strategic. No. That's how you human. You see, we've got to stop blurring, we've got to stop creating this massive separation between there's personal development, there's professional development, they don't interweave together. The reality is the majority of you listening to this podcast right now are currently working from home. Listen to that statement, working from home. There is no separation between your personal life and your professional life. And I don't mean that in an unhealthy way. Well, some of you it's unhealthy. I mean that when it comes to the sense of our development, we are talking about human development. We're talking about holistic development. We're talking about the ability for you to recognize that who you are, if you can get a clear language for who you are as a human being so that you can use that, have that, and utilize it everywhere, I guarantee you your life changes. But it requires the work to discovering who you are. Part 1 of identity mapping is the upside down. Part 2, core values, the why behind doing what we do. Part 3, strengths, the how you operate best. Do you have a language for your strengths? And I don't mean like I'm good at writing. That's more about what you do. I'm asking how you do everything. See, oftentimes we're really good at noticing what our weaknesses are, and then working relatively hard to change something minimally so that we can be mediocre at best. That's a waste of your time. Now, I'm not talking about your character. If you have a character flaw, fix it. I'm talking about your natural innate abilities that you don't have. If you don't have those strengths, stop wasting your time trying to get better at them only to ever be mediocre. Own what you are great at. Stay in your lane. And trust and delegate those around you to be great at what they're great at. But every time you do something mediocre, you're robbing somebody who is great at it the opportunity to be great, simply because you wanted to be noticed. Part 4 of identity mapping. We call this identifiers. This is words and language, everything that ends in ER or OR. These are words like challenger, truth teller, strategizer, lover, warrior. All these different languages that we can, different words that we can use to create a language for our identifiers, okay? And we say identifiers because ultimately identifiers are the thing that we say, this is what we do. This is the impact that we make, okay? This is the way in which we are impacting the world. So when we think about this, my identifiers are challenger, truth teller, and belief creator. That's what I say, what do I do everywhere? That's who I am as a person. That's who I am as a husband. That's who I am as a father. You can ask the 8-year-old in the baseball team. That's who I am there. That's who I am as a coach, as a consultant, as a speaker, as a podcaster, as an author. In all of those ways, my goal is to challenge you, to tell you the truth, and help create new belief in who you are. That's who I am everywhere. That's what I do everywhere. Okay? I want us to begin to understand that identifiers is a language for what we do as a human. Now, I don't want to belabor the point and go through each of these too much here, but what I want you to understand is that the fruit of having all of this, the ability to have a language for why I do things and how I do things and what I do, ultimately is because what we want to begin to understand is when we have this language, we have 13 words, we have 5 values, we have 5 strengths, and we have 3 identifiers right there in the middle. We take all this language and we put it all together, and we put all these words together, that really allows us to begin to see, wait a second, do I have a language for who I am? Now, it shouldn't surprise you when we go through and we read our identity maps, okay? When we go through it, whether that's in our group coaching program or one-on-one with you and I, when you have the opportunity to create your identity map and we go through your identity map together, we read it in the opposite order we created it. That's called the upside down. The reason we do that is because I want you to be able to see a language and it makes the most sense. So we go through and we read it and we say, what do I do? How do I do it? And why do I do it? What do I do? How do I do it? Why do I do it? What do I do? How do I do it? Why do I do it? And we begin to draw lines and connections to show how are each of these words connected together. How is the language for what I do, how I do it, and why I do it connected, so I can begin to see the rhyme, the reason, the impact, and the muscles that I have to utilize in my everyday life. See, the beauty about identity mapping is it's not giving you a language to tell you what profession you should have. Let me go back and tell you my career trajectory. Summer camp director, pastor, wedding photographer, creative business owner, speaker, coach, and consultant. That's not up and to the right. That's not a smooth, linear path. However, the language for who I am in every one of those areas would be very, very similar, if not exactly the same. You see, we get caught up so often trying to find the perfect profession. We spend so little time on the actual person, and we wonder why we feel as though we need to protect ourselves rather than propel ourselves in the direction of our purpose. I know it's a lot of P's there. Your boy likes alliteration. But I want you to think about that. How much energy have you expended trying to really, really find the exact perfect profession, as opposed to spend time, effort, and energy trying to discover who you are as a person? Yeah, Rocky, but people don't care about that. They care about the job. They care about the revenue. They care about the KPIs. I don't disagree with you. So if we know what the functionality at the root basis for business is, would you not believe it valuable for you to spend time, effort, and energy to discover who you are as a human being, so that regardless of the profession that you walk into, you have a clear understanding of who you are as an individual? See, we spend so much of our time hoping everybody else is satisfied. We spend not enough time on us internally to make sure that we are clear and we are understood. And then therefore we flounder, we burn out, we change careers, we get frustrated. We think we need better work-life balance. P.S. That's a lie. When I think ultimately what we're looking for is have a clear understanding of who we are as a human being. Identity mapping, our longest running process about how we help you discover who you are as a human, what that means, and why that matters. Thank you for joining us. Next week, we're going to jump into the imposter within and really looking at how do we understand the imposter's voice. Is doubt the enemy? Is it good? Is it bad? Does it helpful? Is it helpful? And what even causes us to have that voice inside of our head that says maybe, just maybe, you can't do it? As always, I appreciate you. Thank you for joining us. You want to check out what it is that we're doing, go to rockygarza.com/beyond success. Again, that's rockygarza.com/beyond success to check out our next free event for you to attend. And as a reminder to you, life is so much more than your capacity to have a great career. It's about building a life you deeply, deeply believe in and figuring out a way to achieve more than success and live a life beyond success. Thank you for joining us. Let's keep going.